Hello, welcome to another episode of Journey with Jess. I'm your host, Jessica Monge. Today is my favorite interview thus far because it is my first interview with a therapist. Also, this topic hits home for me. We're talking about dealing with narcissistic relationships with parents. And so we have a deep dive with therapist Melissa Lehto. And she's a therapist from Texas. She just has a lot to say. We covered so much information. And if you need a break, take breaks as needed. It's a lot to unpack, a lot to uncover, but I do encourage you to listen to this in entirety. And if you learn something new, let me know in emails or in the comments because I learned so much. And I've had experience with a narcissistic parent in the past, and I just find this interview so fascinating and so educational. Please share this with anyone and everyone. We could completely do a whole season on this one topic alone. But without further ado, this is Journey with Jess.
Okay, Melissa, thank you so much for being on the podcast. How are you doing?
Doing good. Thank you so much for having me here.
Of course. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, of course. So my name is Melissa Lehto. I'm an LPCA. I'm a counselor right now under supervision still by Richard Salcido. I'm here stationed in Texas. I do adult therapy, and my focus is on trauma and anything that has to do with adults experiencing kind of that, from family dynamics through inner child or any other type of trauma that may have affected them.
Awesome. And how did you get into this field? That's very specific.
I actually didn't start it, when I graduated with business. So I had become like a very high up in the banking industry,
Oh,
but
wow.
it was just not fulfilling for me, and as I started to see the different types of how I could help people, I said, you know what, I have to start from scratch and just kind of, and this was important. So as I was taking courses and I was getting experience, internship, a lot of my clients started to becoming adults and more here in the border town, because we are crossing from Mexico. The type of clientele that I saw, it was a lot of adults, experiencing kind of the similar themes of struggling with their family dynamics and with the roles and stuff like that. So that's kind of life put me in that position.
Oh, that's amazing. I think you're doing such amazing work. I love your page and I love all the information you put out there.
Thank you so much.
Of course. So we're going to be talking a lot about narcissistic personality disorder and the psychoeducation on that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the criteria for that and what it is?
Okay, so just like off the textbooks, it's just a lot of grandiosity, just needing a lot of affirmation. When we talk about, narcissistic, it's just kind of that kind of lack of empathy. It's considered a personality, disorder. It's kind of like through that criteria or B, but it's just a lot of importance of the person, not to get too like textbooky, but think about the sun. All the planets are around the sun, right? So it's kind of how narcissism presents a lot of having everything about them, admiration, the need of entitlement, very explosive when things are not, focused on them, lack of empathy or of understanding for others, very similar behaviors. He talks about, the individuality of them, of everything is absorbed by them, that direction of that, and just a lot of the relationships very complex and very difficult. They often have a lot of trouble with their relationships inside the home and outside the home.
Oh, wow. Thank you for explaining that. It says here narcissistic behavior types, right? What are the different types that you've seen?
Some of them kind of have similar traits, but they will differ, a little bit. The first one is the covert. So basically with the covert, the behavior is like more subtle. You won't see it too much. They don't behave loudly. It's not someone that you would recognize like, oh my God, they have narcissism. It's kind of like they feel like fragile, vulnerable, right? They become the victims. Everything is still about them, but they're wanting the praise from others. I'm like, oh, I'm doing horribly at this. And, you have the friend or the parent, no, you're a good parent, you're doing good, like you're great. They still need that admiration, but it's like more of as a backhanded compliment saying what they're needing. They're maybe considered introvert. They also have difficulties taking criticism, but there is this sense of always playing the victim. This is kind of like the highlight at that. They put the blame on everyone else, right? And the core of it is they also have poor self-esteem.
They might not really mean mean it? Like, are they doing it on purpose?
It's not that they don't mean it. It's just that when you play a role of a victim for so long, that's what you believe. You feel like everything is owed to you, and you feel like I'm always this, fragile person. I need to be rescued, and it's the job of everyone else to do that for me.
Oh, very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about like, some other types?
Yes, of course. So the next one, I would call it the communal. This one is kind of a strong morality. They're very black and white. Like they have this regimen of thinking this is how things should be, and anything besides that, they're gonna act out, and they're gonna let you know about it. They may seem like, oh, very generous. Like for example, they're such a good person. They may be part of a community or a group, or they may be part of a religious activity, and they'll be like, oh, they're like great people and anything, but at the same time they're overcompensating. Anything that may look different to them, they would be like a completely average. There's not anything in between. Their values are very altruistic, so there is a reason why they're doing that. Let me show this, how much of a great person I am within my community, but because they're also seeking that type of validation and recognition from others. It's not like, there's a thing of like when you do something good, an act of kindness is like you do it on the hideout, no? But these type
Right,
of
right.
people want to be recognized. Oh, he does so much good for the community or for the church or for this, group. And they just, it's mostly the attention that they're seeking.
Do you think that a narcissistic person would be able to tell that they're a narcissistic person?
Well, I don't think so, because this is just part of their personality. In their mind, they feel like I am a great member of this society or of this group or of this community. So they don't feel like as they're doing something else. Underneath any type of narcissism is just kind of the need of, validation. It's very not talked about, but a narcissistic, on the core value of themselves, they did not have their needs met, usually on their upbringing. So how did they did that is kind of a manifestation of, now I'm going to figure out, because my needs were not met, how can I do it so others can fulfill those needs. So that's why we talk a lot about like them being taking the energy of others, and when that person is no longer usable for that energy supply, they dispose of them and they go and look for them.
So it's mainly more like how they grew up, right?
Yeah. Everything has to do with biological and environment. It's like people often want to say, well, it's in your genes. Yes, absolutely. But it's also the environment. Maybe one sibling had a different support group, different friends with their parents, and they kind of take them in and they help them. Or they had that, teacher that put the support. If we don't have like a replica, even if we were siblings, we have different environments, how we were supported, and the things that we kind of got exposed to. If the other child got exposed to, even let's talk about abuse, physical or sexual, anything like that, then may have triggered other things.
Makes sense. Let's say you believe you know someone who's a narcissist. How would you be able to know for sure? It's not like you could confront them, right?
It usually doesn't work, because everything about the narcissist is deflecting responsibility, or they're very bad at taking ownership of anything that everyone is feeling or doing, or they're doing to them. That's just not how it works. We're talking about the lack of empathy. So if I don't have empathy for others, it's very different for me to sit down with my feelings of what am I doing for those that are around me. I do want to cover the last type. I think the most important is also the malignant. So this one is kind of like the most severe type of narcissism. Some even researchers think that they can be a mix with antisocial personality. Their behavior just get aggravated, they get intensified. So some of them would be a lot of conflict, arguments, maybe sometimes even looking, some aggressiveness or even criminal behavior, just like very expanded kind of type of behavior. You're gonna see more of like a reactive towards the people. It's gonna be cycling more into the relationship. Let's think about the covert, right? Or the community where we don't have, there's not many signs, so it's very like misguided, right? If you know that someone's toxic and they're hitting you or they're doing something, that's more of kind of like shown, and you're going to be more self-aware of that. But that's why they cycle through relationships faster.
Since you just touched upon it, just so people understand, can you define what antisocial personality disorder is?
Yes, antisocial personality disorder is just another spectrum. They don't have regards for others. They have violent or aggressive behaviors, and sometimes it's because, we're talking more of acute diagnosis and stuff like that. It's not the same as when we're talking about, masterminds of people that do crimes. We're talking like that, something like that. It's kind of a mixture of that, it's representative of like no regard at all for anyone, but it becomes into a more of an aggressive and violent kind of behavior.
If I understand correctly, would the difference be between narcissistic people and antisocial personality disorder be the violence?
Yeah, it can be the violence and then just the impulsiveness, of their behaviors and the ways that they do. Like it can be like actually finding pleasure in making others hurt. Whereas the narcissistic may still cause pain, but they not necessarily find pleasure. Some of them may do, but for the most part, they don't even are aware of the damage or the pain that they're causing others.
Thank you for explaining the difference. Okay, next part that we have here is the symptoms, causes, and impacts in the members of the family.
That's a handful.
Yeah.
It's a handful because there's a lot of things or symptoms or that are affecting the family, and I think a lot of them are unseen, right? Because like I said, a lot of them is a lot of emotional of abuse, because a lot of the parents, when they're narcissistic, they're going to be unavailable, neglectful, and abusive. And when you think about it, let's just open it out there, but if there's not that much of physical abuse, right? If we go to CPS or someone, they're gonna be like, oh no, they're taking care, all your needs are taken care of. You have a house, you're going to school, you're doing good, but there's it's kind of like this invisible still pain that the child is carrying, that is just, it's really hard to one prove and to even talk about it, because it's like that's all on you. You should be like, you're responsible for your feelings. Why are you feeling like this? So we go kind of through the gaslighting and stuff like that.
The gaslighting and stuff. I remember this one time, not to get too personal about me, but my mom said this really, really intense thing where she said, I was like maybe 7 or 8. She said, I want to kill you. And then my aunt would come into the room and she'd be like, she didn't mean it, but she would have these bouts of like being very intense verbally and emotionally, but everyone around me was just like, she didn't mean it. And I was like, at a young age, that's very confusing for a child.
So if you were to talk about that pain, it's kind of invisible for others, because we minimize it. In our society or the Latina culture, it's like, oh, no, they didn't mean it, or they know best. You're not getting it there. When you get older, you understand why that was said to you.
Yeah.
So
and
we
it's
get
crazy.
we get re-victimized, one, by the pain the mom caused, but two, either by our community or our families, extended families, kind of accepting and normalizing that type of behavior.
At least from my experience, I feel like some people or family members would try to normalize it to not cut off ties or upset that one person.
Yes,
Yeah.
Latinas families, sometimes we are hard with putting boundaries, or speaking up against, other family members, because it's like, no, we have this very heavy, which it's beautiful. It's the beautiful thing that we have as a Latina family, having this sense of community, of helping each other and being there, the support and the love. But it can also go the other way, where it's, overwhelming, overbearing, codependency, and in this type of dynamics that are sometimes not very healthy.
Right. And also not understanding mental health as much either, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I listed about 7 effects or the takes that the children carry, adult children or young children, that they carry when they are having to deal, with the narcissistic parent. One of them that I think that's the most important is that love is thought to be conditioned. So with that, it's like, you do what I want, you get recognition, validation, my love, my support. You stop not doing what I need or what I want or what I'm expected of you, then I'm going to take that love. So we start learning very early that I have to please my parents. I have to make sure that if they're not doing well, let me look at their features. You know what? They're getting upset. I'm going to start cleaning up and doing everything I can so I don't get in trouble. Or maybe mommy's not doing good, and then let me attend to her emotional needs. So when we start doing this, there's a lot of neglect, not only from the parents, because that love is taken away from us, but from ourselves, when we don't prioritize our needs, when we don't prioritize what is important to us. So this in the long run, we can expect some anxiety or even depression if we have created and being, raised with this type of unconditional love that it does not exist, because everything is conditional on what you're doing for the parent. The second point, is that because everything is about the narcissistic parent, it becomes like, oh my god, my needs are not met, I feel unseen, unheard, not important, I feel like I'm kind of this invisible person. And it only, yeah, a lot of shows up when you want to say, when does narcissism, present, is when not everything is about them. And you can see that, like, for example, in weddings or graduation or birthdays, that's usually when there's more trouble, because now the narcissistic parent is not getting that attention, right? So it's like they sometimes will go and ruin, oh, you shouldn't wear that because te ves gordita, or maybe, yeah, you're graduating, but it's not, you need to go get your master's, or you need to do this, or it's not good enough. Kind of that importance of you celebration from that special event is got kind of get taken away from you.
That actually triggered a memory. I've seen a lot of like I guess memes and reels of like when the mother-in-law comes to the wedding in a white dress, right?
Absolutely.
Would that be like kind of similar, or does that
Yeah.
just like jealousy of like some?
Well, it could be jealousy, but a lot of the times when everything is about the parents, and we're talking about narcissistic parent in this example, everything's about them. So there would be a lot of competition. So in between,
Right.
like a son and a father would be like, who's making more money, who has more, or things. And with the mother, it's like also about figure, like they start getting Botox, or they start doing this stuff, because we have to train our children. It's all about me.
Yeah.
Or the wedding person getting married has a dress, and then mom is doing this extravagant thing for, another dress or stuff like that. It's kind of like this need of outshine their children.
Yeah. No, I've seen that. No, that's interesting because I've seen that meme so often, and I'm just like, what is it with these mother-in-laws? But it's very interesting to me. So let's say an example for anyone who's listening or struggling with something like this. If they have a big event like a graduation, a wedding, or whatever, would a good course of action to keep peace of mind for themselves not invite that person or that parent?
It's a very, very personal, it's very hard for us to see because of so many different, even when we talk about narcissistic parents, we have to put into consideration our cultures or rules, sometimes spirituality, because that is going to be your values. Very hard for say what is one right or wrong answer. But I think if this has been a recurring theme where your events have been kind of pushed aside, or there's some type of drama happening or things happening, so maybe keep the details. The biggest things that you can do with the narcissistic is not engage and not provide that energy level, or that material that can be taken out of context or be used against you. So maybe say, oh, I think the graduation is around this time, I don't know what I'm wearing, I don't like, very
Smart.
kind of like, not a lot of details. And then you going about your event. If it were to be a wedding, then maybe involving mom into a specific project that doesn't have to have that intimate interaction with you, like your makeup, getting ready, your dress, or stuff like that. Just kind of like not putting them into things that can hurt you or that can kind of be used against you on a later time.
Very smart. I love that example because it is hard for our culture to just cut people off. And I also have been seeing this recently too. Someone talked about this, and I want to talk about it more on my social media platform as well, about how in our community, in Latino community, it's not talked about being estranged from your parent, all right? Or being estranged because it could be narcissistic parents or just different reasons. What are your thoughts on that? I guess what would you say to someone who's contemplating like cutting off their parent or setting strong boundaries with their parents?
The toxic or a narcissistic parent, that's not going to go very well, because you're taking their supply, you're taking their energy, and you're making them accountable for something that they don't want to be accountable for. So you're going to have to be very strong in your convictions of what you want to do it, right? It's absolutely, I seen it in some of my clients, it's going to be 100% necessary because of the type of pain and damage and, mental health, how much is hurting your mental health to keep them around. So if you have made the decision, just set boundaries, But the most important thing is being consistent with them. Because if I say, I'm not going to give you access to me if you continue to do A, B, C, D, but then sometimes I don't follow up with that, then I'm inconsistent. So they know that, like, oh, she's not going to follow through.
Right. No, I love that. I say that all the time to everybody I talk to, my clients. I'm like, you have to follow through with the boundary. Like, if you don't, they're not going to take you seriously. Like you said, it's not really talked about in the community, and I know it's really hard for certain people. But I'm glad that it's starting to be talked about online. I guess there's some sort of shame when it comes to talking about that in the Latino community, because we're supposed to be that close, tight knit community where, like, we want to be our parents' retirement plan and do everything for them. And, like, maybe at one point you did, and that was a wonderful dream. I know I did. But then when you get older, you realize that certain things are not well or toxic.
I have a couple more points if you're okay
Yes.
with me.
I was going to
okay,
ask you if you had any more points for symptoms and causes. So yes, go ahead.
Okay. So the next one is, because there is this kind of abandonment by the parent on the children's needs. There we start talking about your identity. Who am I without my parent? Who am I without wanting to do what my parent wants and pleasing them? What values or what things interest me? And then kind of figuring out to, after you figure out, is follow through, because they may not like that person you're becoming, right? So it's kind of this a lot of struggle of your identity, of how I feel, what I need, and also what do I want to be outside the parental unit, even as an adult, because there's so many expectations. So kind of defining your self-identity and having the awareness of saying, this is what I want, even if it's not what my parents want, is such a conflicted one that a child of narcissistic parent has to go through. The next one that I don't see a lot online is the child having, and when I say child, I'm talking about the adult child.
Yeah, the adult child. Not the babies.
I mean, they have to go through it. That's where we
True,
started.
yes,
But
yeah.
I usually refer to the adult. When you have to witness other people being hurt, I don't hear this a lot, but it's like, that's when you start, because the narcissistic does not have really good relationship with others. You start kind of normalizing how people get discarded if they are not doing what they want. So we're talking about people start getting tagged. You're witnessing the narcissistic parent talking poorly about others, overreacting when there's criticism, passive aggressive behaviors, when of like, oh, let me use people. This is a good person that you should date because they have money, because they have, this degree and stuff like that. Or being jealous if you don't have something. And then just kind of the learning of the manipulation, and how to get away with the things that you want is something that because you have this idea of saying, this is my parent, I love them, and when you're an adult child, it's something very difficult to accept that the person you love can do that to others. And then you start kind of like not understanding why, if they're my parent, they're supposed to be, we have this image of what we want them to be. And then we can also see how others are getting hurt in the way, and it can be other family members, other aunts or uncles. And then it just puts you in a position of like, I know it's wrong, but I can't go against my father or my mother, it gets very complex.
Would you say that some behaviors might be learned by the narcissistic parent, but that doesn't make you a narcissistic person?
Absolutely. If you're coming to the awareness of like, oh, wait, what am I doing this? I think the most important thing, and that's a part of this, is kind of having the fear. What if I am like with my parents? And I often tell my clients, yes, you have learned from the best. How to gaslight, how to take advantage of people, how to manipulate. But the fact that you're sitting here contemplating and having the self-awareness of the power that you can have, but you still are electing to figure out what you can do with it, that's already like the break point that they're not going to be able to sit with, that you are doing different. Knowing that it can be your child now, if you are an adult child and you have your own children, or you have, your significant other, or you have your friends, and saying, okay, wait, I am holding their hearts, I'm holding their lives, and why would I want to hurt them? Why would I not want to take accountability? Why would I not want to go to therapy or do what I need to do, to heal from this so it doesn't get passed on? That just speaks volume.
So there's hope, guys.
Yes, absolutely.
Love that. Is there anything else you want to add with like the symptoms and causes and impact in the family?
I think overall, it's just the family dynamics. There's a lot of information I have seen that gets put out, but I just wanted to go through it a little bit of how it looks. So, in the family system, there's this type of dynamics and roles that um, kind of unconsciously they start getting picked up. And that's because we want to create some type of normalcy, even when the family dynamics very toxic or very chaotic. We have the narcissistic, obviously, so we're going to put a member, either father, mother, or you can be even a sibling, right? But we're talking about parents in this example. So they are going to be kind of, again, kind of the center of the family, like the main thing that's going to hold it together. And then we have the enabler, and for the enabler we usually have a father or a mother,
Yeah.
that they see what the family is going through, but they are not speaking up. They're making excuses. They're kind of like the servants, or the person that is going to say yes to everything. Like, oh, they're going to go along with the manipulation. They're sometimes going to help, the narcissistic of like, I just push it aside, they didn't mean that. When we were talking about this, or saying like, no, you can't be mad at mom, or you can't be mad at your dad, like he's really trying, he's providing, or we're making excuses. It just kind of continues to reinforce that unhealthy behavior by the narcissistic parent. And then we have the golden child. The golden child is the one that is like the mold of the narcissistic parent. So it's like the chosen one, right? Because even doesn't have to be true, but they're like,
Yeah.
oh, they're intelligent, all their qualities. Look, they're great with people, with women, with friends, with money, with careers. And it's just kind of a representation of what the narcissistic wants as a family. And it's kind of like the chosen one. It doesn't mean that they're good or healthy, or
Yeah.
but that's the kind of like the chosen one by the narcissistic. So that is what is going to be the example for the other siblings to follow.
I definitely think I was the golden child. If you walk into my parents' house, the whole wall is covered with all my awards and stuff and certificates. And I only got so many because I wanted to please both my parents and they had such high standards. Then there's like another big picture frame of a family photo. And it's like that allure of like, we have a
Mm-hmm.
perfect family. We are yada yada. Like, look at my daughter. She is going to be a lawyer. Like, I think because of that, I broke out of that dynamic and I didn't go to law school and stuff. But exactly like that. I feel so bad for my siblings because my brothers are always compared to me. And I tell them now, I tell them like, do what you love, do what you like, no pressure. As long as you're sustainable and living a happy life, at this point, that is amazing. Don't feel pressured by mom or dad, but those are also very important values I instill in them now. But yeah, when you said that, I was like, damn it, I think I am the golden child of the
Yeah, and there's a
house.
lot of pressure, and there's a lot of guilt, because I can see that you do have guilt for something that you didn't even ask for.
Yeah,
You were
yeah.
just trying to survive the family dynamics. You were trying to, overcompensate to make sure everyone was put at peace and stuff like that. But I'm sure that now that you left, there's a replacement for you.
Oh
I
yeah,
mean,
that's definitely I have a younger sister that's 5, and she's like her whole world. She does everything right, and she's just like her princess. And I'm happy for them. I love that for them. But it's a different story because she's autistic, so that's why she's the new golden child. But yeah, whenever I would walk into the house, my friends would be like, "Oh my God, Jess, you have so many awards! Oh my goodness!" And I'm like, "Can we not talk about that right now? I don't. This is not even for me." But
right.
yeah, since I moved out, the new golden child is my little sister. She is their world because she's so precious and beautiful and perfect. And she's living her best life because she doesn't even know what's going on. I know that she doesn't have too much internalized pressure because of
Yeah.
her condition as well.
And the thing that they don't talk of the golden child, because people think that you asked to be in that position, but a lot of times you didn't.
Hmm.
And it comes with the whole pressure of like, wait, I'm doing so great. Why am I not feeling well? Why am I
Hmm.
not feeling like mom actually loves me? Why do I feel like this emptiness? Why I feel like I don't have a sense of myself? Like a lot of times, like I say, they didn't choose to be in that position. So there's a lot of feels of guilt of not living the way the people are representing your life to be. Do you
Right.
understand?
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. And I'm sure a lot of other people will resonate. Maybe like I see a lot of either the first daughter or the eldest daughter that feels this pressure and stuff. I have friends who felt it. I know a lot of people online talk about it. So I know they're gonna resonate a lot with it.
Yeah. And there's also this thing of like when you're so high, you also get so low. We'll talk about the scapegoat, but like if you're the golden child, you have never been in trouble. So you don't even know what it feels like to be in trouble. You don't feel like you don't know what it is to disappoint. That's why you're overdoing it and overachieving and so kind of going from that high to that low is gonna feel very, very, very much like a lot overwhelming sometimes for that golden child, to kind of change the role or even remove themselves from the family unit.
Yeah, it's definitely an overwhelming process, and it's hard without support or without a therapist, I think. You definitely have to go through that with a professional and with a good support system. And then when you do disappoint, it hits so hard, more than usual, right? It's like an abnormal like overwhelm.
Yeah. So the scapegoat, for those that don't know, is kind of like the chosen one, but the chosen on the other extreme, the one that always gets blamed for, the one that's not doing things well, the one that is, kind of going off the rails from the family, is kind of the one that is disappointing or the cause of the problem why the family is not working. So with them, usually they are always in trouble. They feel like they don't belong in their family, like they have this sense of knowing a little bit more of themselves. That's why they're departing from the family. But it does not mean that it's easy for them because they're usually the only person standing up to the whole unit. So mom, the enabler, the narcissist, the parent or mother, and then the enabler into the golden child. So they're kind of going through this by themselves.
Yeah. That's hard. Is it possible for the golden child to also be the scapegoat or vice versa?
Yeah, there's not a set feature where you can change from one to the other. And then lastly, we have the invisible child. And this is,
That's so sad.
Yes, this one is that they know that there is something wrong, but they don't want to be called like the bad one and they don't want to be overachiever. So they kind of go on their own, they do their own thing. They're within the norms of the narcissistic parent. They're just not getting up or down, they're not overachieving or getting in a lot of trouble or not like opposing a lot of the parent, but they kind of often get overlooked. They feel like and the parent feels like it doesn't serve me a purpose because you're not giving me anything to get excited or you're not giving me anything to get mad about, so kind of they're left out. And sometimes they are but they carry a lot of trauma too because it's kind of like feeling like
left out, maybe.
Absolutely left out. So, and then we have the flying monkeys, and this can be siblings or it can be aunts or cousins or anyone like that it kind of goes into alliance, with the parents or and these are people that are going to get information. So once you acknowledge your family is not doing good and your narcissistic parents are kind of hurting you and you're wanting to step away and you're putting those boundaries, then we have the flying monkeys, those cousins, siblings. They're going to be like, have you reached out to mom? Mom is not doing good. Like there's these different people that are going to be coming and want to kind of pull you back into the family unit or get information for the narcissistic parent.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, I definitely have a lot of those as well. I wanted to ask this earlier, but I'm going to mention that now before I forget. You mentioned excuses earlier, and the excuse of like, but that's your mother or but that's your father. For me, that was a very heavy thing because it was very confusing. Like, oh yeah, that is my mother. She carried me for 9 months, but they're doing all these things to me. How can you battle and get yourself to understand that it's okay that even though that is your parent, you're allowed to set boundaries?
Like I said, it's going to be very, very different and very difficult, For the scapegoat will be like a little bit easier because they were always the one that was not accepted, not done, and they already feel like this sense of disappointment that they have carried, throughout. But at the same time, it's going to be hard because you have to have a good sense of yourself. And that comes, when I going through the actual effects of the children that are going to be facing is going to be really hard because a lot of this has to come with a sense of who am I, and you have gone through so much gaslighting that you don't even know the reality. You don't know if the things that you're feeling, they're real or not, and then you compare it to other experiences with other parents and they're like, oh, but they're having a great time with their parents, or Mother's Days or Father's Days comes in and everyone is this, super socialized and think of like how much you're giving mom and how much you're celebrating them. And then you have this guilt and kind of isolation of sitting with yourself. when you're making the decisions to put a distance or setting boundaries with them. It's a very complex thing to have to deal with.
I was gonna say, I think it's interesting because when it comes to those big holidays and stuff, I feel like for the child, whether they're children now or they're adult children, and they're the only ones not playing into the family dynamic and the cultura and the closeness, I feel like they're the only ones who could see the family for who they are, and everybody else is behind the glass, pretending everything's okay. And like you said, that could be very, very lonely and very confusing.
And that can create, kind of a sense of guilt because we were raised to be like, you better honor your father and your mother. You better respect them. What they say is for the better of you. Like they're doing this because they care for you. They're doing this because they love you. They're doing this because they know better. So we get sometimes stuck with this image of saying, like, but they don't know me better. They want me better, but I doesn't feel good. I'm not doing good. They don't even know how this is hurting me, right? So I think it's just with the sense of a good support group, or even if it's outside the home, kind of identifying those people that can be safe outside the home, either through a mentor, a friend, a family of other friends, that you can feel like, okay, this feels like it's for the most part safe and it is healthy. Going in there, you can still celebrate those important men or women in your life, but they don't necessarily have to be your own parents.
Very nice. Finding that chosen family, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Anything else you'd like to add before we move on to the next glitch?
Sure. So I'm like, what are the results, or the impacts of interpersonal functioning or relationships? How does this affect, the adult children? Well, obviously we're dealing with a lot of low self-esteem, some insecurities. We are also dealing with trust issues in relationships. And I see this a lot. If I can't trust my parent, which is like the highest form of relationship that we did have, how am I going to be able to create these bonds with friends or with a significant other? Why are people going to be nice to me without having an agenda or wanting to get something? Like, so trust issues is going to be, very highlighted. A lot of self-doubt, a lot of needing validation from others, sometimes codependency, or creating kind of similar patterns with new relationships, or wanting to be this kind of perfectionism, or having the opposite of kind of self-destructive tendencies, trouble setting boundaries, not only with obviously your parents, but with others in other fields. It can be in your career, it can be while you're doing other things or maintaining friendships, and kind of this difficulty of expressing feelings. Sometimes because we have repressed our emotions for so long, we don't even have the ability to cry or to feel. It's kind of this numbness of like, I know I feel it, but I don't know how to express it or verbalize it. And also, like I said, it just created maybe this unknown sense of self. And then obviously it can also affect your mental health, with long-term effects.
All these things, like, I just want to reiterate to anybody who's listening, like, seek a professional, always go to a therapist, because this takes a lot of work to go through, and you can't just go to like a friend or a mentor. Like, this needs to be done professionally.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we talk about treatment, it's still kind of a new field. That's the thing with therapists, and I'm sure this is why you decided to do your business of helping people connect with the right therapist, is because we are gonna have to have our own ideologies and ways of treatment. If you are dealing with with a narcissistic parent, you want to make sure that you're coming across with someone that is going to validate your experience, because if they do not have or they're not exposed to this type of training, they can be sometimes unfortunately doing some damage because they don't have experience with it. So I think it's very important for you to find, and if you find one and it's not the right fit, then keep on looking, right? We have to be your best advocate. But I'm glad that you're providing this type of services so you can alleviate people from having to go through so many therapists and find the right one.
Thank you. I appreciate it, because like, I've been there, I've done that, and it's hard to find someone who specializes. And there, you also go through like research fatigue and stuff, because you just go through so many, they don't answer you, you're on a wait list, or they're just not good. But thank you. That's why I love what I do. I think that there is a right therapist for everybody. It just sucks that insurance limits us a little bit. Where there's a will, there's a way, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So part of the therapies that you want to be able to find is like having like good whatever old coping mechanisms you were using to survive, the family and the crisis that you were going through. We have to kind of learn new ones to be able to replace those, because naturally we're going to want to revert into that, like people pleasing or not saying what your needs are, and like going into wanting to save other people and stuff like that. So it's very important to kind of identify the ones that did not serve us, and also identify the ones that we can replace them with, and just learn a lot about healthy relationships, how to communicate, sometimes assertively, because it's important what you have to say, and it's very valid in your point of view and your values, and also just kind of a lot of attachment and of the different type of attachments and so on, and just acceptance, right? We have like a special treatment that is, we call it radical acceptance, and it's just kind of accepting things for how they are. We're not going to be able to change your narcissistic parent, and usually people say, what if they go to therapy? Yes, they can learn coping skills, but if we don't have that empathy or that self-awareness, then how are they going to be able to gain what they can from therapy? So sometimes the best thing that we can do is just accept things for how they are, and then decide how we're going to be able to move forward.
Yeah, and I know that's not the answer a lot of people want to hear. It's kind of like,
Unfortunately.
we like, what? But it's true, like trying to get someone like that to accept that there is a problem. The first step, that's virtually impossible. It's very hard for someone like that. And then for them to actually go to therapy and take it seriously, that's a whole nother thing as well. Are there therapists for narcissistic people? Is that like a big field, or is it still a very small field, or not existent?
No, there's two of like my so one is Dr. Romani, and she's like the specialist of of narcissism. And then we have in YouTube, it's called Mental Healness, and this individual has actually been diagnosed with narcissism, and
Oh,
he
wow.
tells it from his own experience. He has been in therapy for an extended period of time. I like his account, and to see it because of therapy, he has created some awareness. He's still maybe very liable of wanting to do and behave the way he does, but now he has the awareness because of saying, oh, I'm wanting to do this. So it gives you a different perspective of the actual person that
Wow.
that has narcissism, and how he goes about relationship, children's parenting, and other aspects and so on.
That's amazing. I need to look at that YouTube. That's awesome. I'm really excited to hear that, because that means that in a few years it's going to be more of them will go to therapy, and it'll be normalized, and they won't feel like they're attacked, right? Because I feel like that's one of the things, they feel attacked when those things are brought up. So that's exciting. That's awesome. So the next bullet here we have is healing an unresolved grief. For, I'm assuming, is the adult children or children listening.
Yes. That's one a complex, and I kind of told you it takes like a whole new podcast to do this, because it's
Right.
just so complex, because we have the sense of loss, and it's very difficult to lose someone that is still living, because you can technically go running and be present with them, but because of what they hurt you, and when you start validating and acknowledging everything that has happened, you kind of are having to choose yourself, and that doesn't come really easy for a child of a narcissistic parent, because we still have love and respect and everything for that parent, but we're choosing or healing over the parent. So that is going to come with a lot of complications when it comes to grieving, because we're going to have obviously the parent that is not going to be okay with it. We're going to have the enabler, the other maybe parent, that is also very upset that you're doing this, putting boundaries or setting a distance. We have now the relationships that you have lost with your siblings, because you're not coming in contact with that narcissistic parent. And then anyone else, or all the flying monkeys, or the other extended family so we're not talking about just the loss of one person. We're talking about the loss of the extended family unit, and also the loss of yourself, of the perception of what you wanted and you had desire as a family or as a child to receive from your parents. So it gets very, very complicated. It kind of touches the different parts of you.
Right. No, and it's definitely very hard when you lose a whole family.
Absolutely. You have to grieve. You have to grieve. There's no healing without grieving, because we are losing. we're losing the family we wanted, and we're losing so many, like I say, so many relationships and everything. And I think the first time we want to do is like obviously what we're doing. We want to bring this to the awareness. We want to advocate, and then start kind of working through the process of the grieving. So, but I think the first one is through awareness and just sitting with our feelings and kind of attending to them and saying, okay, there's something that, is pulling, even as you're hearing this podcast, is something that is coming, or I'm starting to feel things. So let me do more research and start kind of making attempts of getting help or figuring out, what's my next step when it comes to my family and getting some type of healing through this. I think one of the things that I would focus on is, I do a lot of inner child work with my clients and in reparenting. And for those that don't know what that is, I always say that we do carry the wounds of when we're children. I always say to my clients, but I feel like we're all children just walking in adult bodies.
I love that.
We didn't ask for that to be broken, but we do now as adults have, the obligation to ourselves to say, okay, this is what happened. And what are we going to do about it? Let's go ahead and take care of ourselves. As a child, you have so many limitations. You can't just get your car and leave the family. You're
Right.
completely dependent of your family. But as the adult, you can now take that initiative and saying, okay, I need to talk to specialists. I need to find safe relationships. I can, sit with my feelings. I can acknowledge what I have gone through. And I can also provide myself with the things that I need. It's very important for us to identify what needs we did not get met when we were children. That's kind of the hole that we feel, as a person sometimes, and kind of saying, how can I attend to those needs now as an adult?
That would be kind of both, right? The inner child healing and the reparenting, right?
Absolutely.
Very nice. And you don't have to explain them. Can you just list off the other ways of healing?
There are some support groups or community groups that are available that they may prompt, with journaling, with doing things as a group, and they can provide also information. You want to just make sure that it's someone that's licensed or they has, a very strong background, because sometimes, since narcissism is kind of like the trending theme. So people unfortunately may be taking advantage of this. But if you see that someone has a specialty, or they have something very based and evidence based as a support group or community group, then you can maybe join on that. There is a lot of meditation, grounding that you can do for yourself, kind of to calm your nervous system, because as a narcissistic child, you're overstimulated for the most part, so learning how to calm your nervous system, how to be grounding, how to be present, how to be staying here in the moment, without getting too attached to the fear of what's going to happen on the future, or or with the sadness of everything that you have gone through. It's kind of one of the important things of staying present. And then obviously educating yourself, through reading books or listening to podcasts, or finding resources.
Thank you so much. I think we did a wonderful job covering everything. And for anyone who's curious, Melissa is a therapist and a mental health coach. Do you want to give a little bit of your information on both, in case anyone who's listening wants to get in touch with you?
Yes, of course. I try to be in everything, YouTube, but I'm in Instagram, Mental Health in Color. That's my username. And then my phone number is 813-508-8826. And then I can provide, any therapy services or advice through social media, but I do offer free consultations just to provide you with information about my services, or even recommend you other providers that I may not be able to help you, but I can send recommendations and so on.
Awesome. And you're based in Texas, right?
Yes, based in Texas. So therapy, I can see anyone in the state of Texas.
Awesome. And for mental health coaching, you're doing anyone in the States, right?
Yes.
Awesome. And for anyone who doesn't understand the difference, do you mind explaining what the difference is?
Yeah, so therapy is through licensing through the state of Texas. So that would be me having the ability to provide a diagnosis, follow a treatment, and follow up with any other, professional. So I may send recommendations to see a specialist or a psychiatrist or a primary doctor to make sure that we are able to collaborate when we're seeing more of the depression or anxiety, and sometimes medication would be needed. I can do that. When it comes to mental health coaching, it's more talking about specific goals that you want to achieve. Maybe you want to focus just on your boundaries, right? Or you want to identify what boundaries do you want, or you want to identify what your values are.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for explaining the difference. I know some people are very confused by the two. The last thing we have here are any recommendations for books, podcasts, or movies and shows?
Yes. So, books, there's so many. I will send you a list. But there is like Healing the Adult Children of Narcissism. We have Will I Ever Be Good? The Healing the Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. We have The Emotionally Absent Mother. And then we have Whole Healing. We have a lot of them, so I will send them to you. But if
Awesome.
you want to get information, like I say, Dr. Ramani, she's in YouTube. She has a podcast and also mental healthness.
Nice. Thank you so much. If you send it to me, I'll put it in the description. But one last question that kind of just came to my head. Are most narcissistic parents mothers?
I don't know exactly, the research, because some research, but it's sometimes outdated. They have listed men to be most likely to be narcissistic. There's so much research to be done still,
Okay.
because we're talking about primary ethnicities and stuff like that. And also the studies, how they were presented. I think it can be either or. I don't think there's a prevalence. I mean, you'll see it through parents, either both male or female.
Okay. I was just curious because when you were naming the books, I was like, I have seen mainly it's like the narcissistic mother books. So thank you for explaining. Before we end, what is one piece of advice you want to leave for anyone listening?
I just want to install the hope, I know this is all overwhelming. I know it feels like for the longest time, even if you're hearing this for the first time, or maybe you have done your research and you came across the channel in the actual video or podcast. It's just for you to know that what you're feeling is real. You don't have to, second guess yourself no more. And I hope that you find the community that can come with you so you can feel supported, so you can go and take the next step in your healing journey.
Yay, thank you so much.
Thank you so much for listening to The Journey with Jess.
Thank you for listening to this episode with Journey with Jess. I hope you loved it as much as I did. Please give this episode 5 stars if you learned something new, and if you loved it. New episodes roll out every Tuesday, 10 p.m. EST. Please share this. I think Melissa shared so much educational information that will help so many people. She has left us recommendations on podcasts and books down in the description below. Please take a look at it if you need her assistance or if you're in Texas. She also left her contact information down below. She is very wonderful. So thank you again for listening to Journey with Jess. Bye.